What's up, boopers? Welcome to my Black Desert Online guide for Rangers. This guide is intended to give you a general overview of the Ranger skills and playstyle and gearing to help you decide if you want to play the class. So let's get started! Boop. In Black Desert Online, Rangers wield bows as their main weapon and daggers as their secondary weapon. For resources, they use mana and stamina. Nearly every attack generates mana if it lands, and mana is for your bigger spells. So let's start with the default skills. We've got a dodge rule by double tapping keys, but pretty much every class has this. Your auto attack is bound to your left click. It's pretty low damage, but is mainly used as a source of restoring your mana or aggroing monsters. If you hold shift while casting it, you can consume mana to cause your arrows to do AoE damage, and this is one of your only sources of AoE for low levels. A passive that you will start out with is Spirit's Mental Healing, and this skill governs the amount of mana returned to you from most of your attacks. This is a no-brainer to skill, as each rank only costs 3 points and increases the mana you get every time you rank it up. Hotkeyed to your right click will be a dagger swing, a skill you probably won't use very much. It does reduce your target's speed on hit, but you'll very rarely be in melee range unless you're PvPing. It's good at low levels, however, as it is a pseudo-cleave AoE that allows archers to kill stuff in groups, but its damage falls off quickly and it's usually better to just stay out of melee range after level 10. Paired with it is a kick skill that you'll start with bound to your F key, which is primarily used to knock down or knock back opponents. You'll learn 2 kick skills as a ranger. The other can be cast by running forward and pressing F, and can be upgraded to allow you to even jump clean over enemies. They are melee skills, but don't write them off too easily. These skills are invaluable in PvP because while most of the ranger CC does not work fully on PvP targets, these 2 kicks do, and you'll have melee guys up in your face very often. The last 2 skills you'll start with is Exploit Weakness and Wind Control. Now, Wind Control is a bit clunky to use, requiring you to press right click and then hit shift. And this sometimes results in you melee swinging the air for no reason first. So until you master it, I'd recommend hotkeying it to your skill bar. But this skill isn't that good. It requires you to charge your shot, leaving you immobile, and only hits one target. It does knock down, but not very effectively in PvP. You can also take skills to allow you to hold its charge while running, but not many people bother with it. Exploit Weakness, on the other hand, is a beautiful skill for restoring mana. Weaving it into Evasive Shot, Exploit Weakness is done by left-clicking, auto-attacking, and then simply pressing the S key to fire multiple shots at once. You can pair it with a combo skill to make it even knock it down by pressing Q right after Exploit Weakness to cast Reaper's Fury, but we'll go over that skill in a second. Let's talk about Evasive and Moving shots. Evasive, Moving, and Exploit Weakness will be your primary stamina spenders at high level. They'll keep you mobile and restore your mana when you run out. Moving shot is done by moving left or right and then auto-attacking, and these shots can get a damage bonus. This is great for when you are running around and trying to gather mobs together. However, Evasive shot is done by left-clicking and then moving. Gets a damage bonus and a crit chance bonus, and can move you diagonally if you hold W and A or S and A. At max rank, Evasive Shot will allow you to weave in other skills and cancel animations to dash, and this is godsend for your squishy ranger, as well as allows the casting of Exploit Weakness to restore mana ridiculously fast. It can also be paired with Reaper's Fury and the Exploit Weakness combo to allow you to spam Reaper's Fury, so let's learn about that skill. Reaper's Fury can be cast by pressing Q and has a knockdown effect, but at low ranks its AoE range is small, and the knockdown effect doesn't really work that well in PvP. It does apply an avoidance reduction debuff to enemies, and this skill is one of your few high damage skills that can be cast while being immobile, by weaving it into evasive shots to remove its cast time, making it very useful in PvP. However, it eats mana insanely fast if you are weaving it, and it's usually not worth casting in this way in PvE. At max rank, it does have a second component that allows you to fire on fallen enemies, and these shots are 100% crit chance. Ceaseless Windblade. This skill is your first main damage skill and you will obtain it, I believe, from a Black Spirit quest. By pressing E, you can go prone and hold left click to unleash arrows at a group of enemies that will stun them, and the last shot will knock them prone. The CC component doesn't work well in PvP like most of your skills, but until you get Evasive Explosive Shot, this will be your main method of killing monsters at low level, by pulling them all together and then laying into them with this. Like most skills, it can be cast again while it's on cooldown, but if you do, it'll have reduced damage. But reduced damage is often better than no damage. Now, this skill does massive damage, but bear in mind that it immobilizes you, putting you at risk in PvP or when you are soloing bosses, etc. Against bosses and players, wait until they're distracted or CC'd to try using this. It isn't very good for AoE grinding though, or speed farming, because it requires monsters to be relatively lined up or grouped up. So let's go into the AoE grind skill you'll be using, Explosive Evasive Shot. You don't get this skill until later in the game, so leveling archers can be painful, but once you get it, it's smooth sailing. Low mana, high damage, high area of effect, woohoo! This skill is cast by holding S and right clicking to jump back, then clicking again to shoot midair. The skill comes from ranking up Explosive Evasive Shot. You can skill a shot to fire at landing as well, but you'll mainly be using the shot in the air. If you skill it in Extreme, it allows you to do a second air jump after your shot at the cost of stamina by pressing a directional key and spacebar, so that you jump around like a psycho bunny. At max rank, a portion of the damage this skill does scales off of your HP as well. Next we'll go over to Will of Wind, another large AoE skill you'll get early on, usable by pressing Shift and Q. The skill can knock down in PvE and it doesn't do a lot of damage, but it applies an armor debuff, so you'll want to use this on large groups or bosses that won't die in one hit. Another buff that affects rangers is called Call of the Earth. This puts an orb on the ground that increases the accuracy of all nearby allies. Higher ranks increase its range and accuracy bonus. This needs to be cast about once every 30 seconds to keep it up, but it's worth casting against bosses or purple monsters to ensure your shots don't miss. This is the first skill you'll be required to put on your skill bar, though it doesn't have a default hotkey. Another skill that has no hotkey by default is Feather in the Wind. And this is your long range huge damage burst in Black Desert Online, ideally used for fighting world bosses or in large scale siege PvP. This skill fires a volley of arrows that do a lot of damage, but only to targets far away. You can't really aim it so well, it's kind of like a spray and pray. At max rank, you're allowed to spam several volleys by holding shift and left clicking. This skill also utilizes your Black Spirit's power you get at level 50. When it's at 100%, the skill's damage will be increased by 200%, making it extremely deadly if you position yourself correctly. It also keeps you clear out of harm's way, and only has a 7-second cooldown when skilled up. You can use it while it's on cooldown like the other skills, but its damage will be reduced. 2 skills left. We'll quickly touch on Cutthroat Arrow. This is like a counterpart to Ceaseless Windblade, cast by holding S key and E. It has a charge up time, doing more damage the longer it's charged, but instead of shots costing mana like Ceaseless Windblade, they only restore it, and it also slows and applies a bleed effect. The bleed damage isn't very high, and many players opt out of using this skill because of its wind-up time. Lastly, Advancing Wind. It has no hotkey and needs to be bound, but it is an upfront one-shot skill that does a ton of damage in a small area, and knocking down doesn't work much in PvP, but its damage is also percentage health based at max rank, getting bonuses from your HP. This skill is mainly great because it's such high damage without making you immobile momentarily like Ceaseless Windblade or Feather in the Wind, and it can be comboed with different kick skills to instant cast in PvP. That's the gist of the ranger skills, so let's get an idea of their playstyle. At low levels, you'll be forced to group up monsters using auto attacks in order to Will of the Wind and Ceaseless Windblade them, using Q to knock them down as well. Leveling as a ranger sucks ass. They're one of the weakest leveling classes, but they make up for it later. To AoE groups at high level, you can pretty much just spam Evasive Explosive Shot, only using Evasive Shot and Exploit when you need mana. The shot has a huge radius and does tons of damage, enough to kill most groups on its own without having to wait to group them up. Versus bosses, when soloing, you'll have a hard time finding openings to use Ceaseless Windblade. When you do, take the opening, but otherwise do damage with evasive and explosive shots and advancing wind. In groups, or versus large bosses, or in large scale PvP, what you'll want to do is position yourself to spam Feather in the Wind and Ceaseless Windblade for massive damage. As long as no one is threatening you in melee range, you are a powerhouse. For gearing, you'll mainly want to go for crit, stamina, and health, as some of your skills scale with your HP. You can go for Heavy's armor for the HP, or Neil's armor for the damage. They kinda balance out, but Neil's is a bit more expensive. For bows, you'll want Yuria as the cheap end game, or Leverto or Zaka if you're a high roller. For skill awakenings, you'll want to try and get attack speed or crit bonuses on Windblade, Advancing Arrow, or Evasive Shot. Evasive Shot being the most important to get a good awakening on, as it's used in almost any situation, so you'll always have the buff. And that's all there is to Ranger. There's a few mini skills I didn't touch on, like the passive 10% movement speed you get from Black Spirit quests, but you should have an idea of how all of her abilities work. Her skill combos are very easy to use, very easy to learn, and she's very fun to play. One of the best classes for soloing bosses because of her ability to deal high damage from a distance while remaining immobile. Hope this guide helped you decide whether or not she is the class for you. Let me know in the comment section what class you guys would like to see next. Until then, I am booping out. Boop.